So thank you very much for tuning in. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about index plungers. All the index plungers and the different styles you can see here are all held in stock here at our Chichester factory, and basically they're all listed in the Wixroyd Standard Parts Handbook, which is about 1,000 pages of design parts for design engineers. And then all the CAD files are on the website and all the live pricing is as well. There we go, so thank you for that. So index plungers. Index plungers are generally used to locate a fixture or an object in space, and basically it is locating from this pin, which you can see at the end of it here. So there are, as you can see, a lot of different types of index plungers, but the main difference is whether they lock out when they're pulled out of position. So for example, this is a pin index plunger that is called a locking index plunger. So when I pull this handle, okay, instead of just letting it go, I've got the ability to rotate this through 90 degrees, and that will then be locked out in position. So for example, somebody might be doing some work on something, they've moved it, they want it locked out whilst it's being moved, and then once it's in position, they can simply release it and back you go. So that is a standard type of index plunger. The other differences of index plungers are mainly the material. So for example, this is a burnished steel finish with a plastic handle. Then I've got some here, for example, that are all stainless steel parts, and they would, for example, be used for pharmaceutical applications, high-end finishing applications, anything where you need to make sure there's no corrosion resistant, because over a period of time this burnished steel, if exposed to a lot of air and damp, it might get rusty. So those are the different sizes. Obviously what's important when you've got an index plunger is the pin diameter. So this diameter is probably about 12 millimeters. So you can get pin diameters, very small ones, for example this one here, probably about 4 millimeters diameter, all the way up to bigger versions of this. And then the thread size of the plunger. So most index plungers used to have fine thread pitches. So for example, that's it's not a coarse thread basically, and there are other ones lately, for example now, that are coming out with standard metric coarse pitch threads. So in summary, that's the difference. It's a question of how much you want to pay for the positioning of the index plunger. So these examples here are quite rough and ready. They haven't got the same tolerance and positioning accuracy on the pins as some of the high-end index plungers. So what I thought I'd do is just quickly run down the different types of index plungers that we've got available. So this, for example, is an index plunger, and sometimes people want to have a flag. So basically this flag will show that you can rotate it 90 degrees, and that will show the actual position of the index plunger, and it enables operators to see quickly whether that is locked in position or not by just that 90-degree turn of the handle. So that one there is just a push, and that's in place, and it's a flicker switch, and then you're back out. So you can see the difference there between that in its relaxed state, between those two there. So that one in its natural state is with the pin withdrawn, and this one here is you pull it and push it back. Okay, so a little bit of a difference between those two there. This 32460 index plunger is probably the top end of index plungers. So it's got a very, very precise pin, and it will normally be supplied with a special locating bush as well. So this is for when you want to really accurately position something. Maybe you're doing some secondary work on it that needs some very close positioning on it, and again that can be pulled out. This isn't a locking out index plunger, this is just a pull index plunger, but that is the more expensive version. And then this one here, the 32540, is just simply different ways of mounting the index plunger. So for example, with these index plungers that we're talking about here, you're going to put that through a a hole, maybe with a couple of nuts into a threaded hole, and put that in place. But this one here, you can mount it with a flange base. So again, that's just a simple pull. And then going up this side here, these are the ones that are used when you might have a mass-produced part that you need to produce very inexpensively. Again, this is a very small lockout, so a locking index plunger. You pull out, rotate the handle, and off you go. But that is vastly less expensive than some of these other elements that we're talking about here. This is a similar thing with a little pull handle, and that is very relatively cheap. Then moving on to different ways again of mounting the index plunger. This is a simple mount from the side, and that's rotate the handle, and then you can pull it back out. Okay, so that just retracts the pin there. So I'm sorry just to rattle through the different types of index plungers, because you know essentially they do the same thing, but I want to show you the different styles of elements they've got. This, for example, is a T-handle index plunger, very good grip for people, so that's an option there. Sometimes people want to have an index plunger, but they don't like any of the standard grips that we've got, and maybe they want something with a longer reach to move something out of the way. So this one here has got a little thread on the top of the index plunger, and that basically you can mount your own knob onto it to maybe you want a longer reach, or you want a special handle to do with that. So that's an option there. When it comes to smaller applications, you sometimes want to mount these units onto sheet metal strips, bits of sheet metal, and this one here will have has got a very low profile, and you can mount that onto a sheet metal, put a nut on the end of it, and again that's a very simple and effective way for lower profile applications. These two here are pretty much the same sort of thing, but this one here you can see slightly, this is a stainless steel version of it, and this is like a miniature zinc plated steel version here. So those different, obviously each one of these parts has got loads and loads of different sizes and different materials, and it's got the location hole diameters on the catalogue data sheet. Again, if you want to mount something in a different way, you can mount that with the different flange option there. So you would put that with two countersunk screws, and again you can just simply, this one's a lockout position, lock out, and then it goes. And that's actually quite an unusual index plunger, because this pin is relatively large, so that's an extended pin index plunger. These units here, really nice. And they are stainless steel, but the difference between these two here, for example, so what you'll find is that this has got a special collar on it, so that's actually spacing the handle away from whatever you're mounting it on, and that gives a little bit of a better grip, as opposed to something like this that will actually mount very, very flush up to whatever you've mounted that onto. So that's another option there. This index plunger here is quite unusual as well. Again, so what that's got is got a special bush, and you can, for example, mount that to very thin sheet metal, and you put the sheet metal onto there, and then you can wind up the bush, and that will grip between the bush, so you can screw that onto the sheet metal strip, and again off you go, and that's a locking positioning one there as well. Finally, on index plungers, and it's really just to give you an overview, this is sort of quite an effective one, and that can be used either in the push position or in a pull position. So again, what you would do, you might, for example, want to mount your own knob to it, or you might want to mount some sort of special locating device to it, and you can either use that to push the pin into place, or if you mounted a knob from that end, you could mount it to pull the pin out of the way. So there you go. A little bit of an overview. It's not the world's most complex subject, index plungers, but it just shows you the sort of big array of index plungers that there are. We've also developed new index plungers which also have a special red button on the top of them, and that will indicate to the operator whether the pin is extended or retracted, and that's quite a useful thing. So one final thing, maybe just to try and make the video a little bit more interesting than just talking about index plungers. I wanted to just show you about developments in knobs and handles. So what we've got here is we've got two different types of knobs. This is your standard knob, forget the colour, that's not the important bit. And then this knob here has got an actual bush on it. So basically what that's doing is that is actually reducing the friction as you wind the knob down, and that enables you to, with the same size thread and the same size knob, to get about 3 times the clamping force. So this is an example here where with a standard knob you would wind, and I've just got some disc springs shown, you would wind these down, and after a certain time that gets quite difficult to do, whereas if you've got this knob with an actual bush down, relatively speaking you can keep winding that down and it's way more easy to clamp the same force than this thing, which would be quite useful for operators, for example, who want to tighten parts down, or you wanted to make sure that something in place. So this is you can see the difference just about in the clamping force, and that was a lot easier to depress these disc springs. So thank you very much for having a quick look at the Index Plunger range. As I say, they're all on the website along with all the CAD files, which makes things a lot easier in Step File and SolidWorks and IGES and all these different things. Thank you, and please feel free to ask for the Wixroyd Standard Parts catalogue. It also comes with some freebies like some mugs and things like that.